starting with the. So welcome, Orsolya, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much for inviting and for the possibility to present myself and my work to this community. Kind of my name Lelkes means spirited or enthusiastic in Hungarian. So I love this kind of as a life manifesto as well. And actually I think it kind of depicts my energy or my attitude to life pretty well, because I started off as an economist, but already at that time was really intrigued by social psychology and the kind of questions of the public good and how we can create a good life, and then later I started to work as a researcher. So I was working in the public sector in the finance ministry, and then also kind of did a PhD in London. So I was kind of more and more engaged in research of these issues, and then had another pillar working with groups and individuals as a psychological counselor. So kind of recent years, I kind of thought it's time to weave these worlds together. So so I did that, and this is kind of the baby or the product of this kind of weaving, the tapestry, the colorful tapestry. My book, which will be the kind of basis of this talk today as well. And I think this kind of division is not just kind of in my own life. I think it reflects in many of our institutions and many of our way of functioning, that there is psychology, which often looks at the individual kind of world, and there is kind of a social science or even economics, which doesn't question personal beliefs and stories and tastes. So kind of somehow taste and preferences are kind of given, and the best we can do is to support people to achieve them. But I think it really has lots of benefits, and the time is calling to kind of question this and to weave together these two fields. And I would like to now start my presentation. I prepared a PowerPoint presentation, and so this is the book I'm going to talk about, and I believe that we are living in kind of extraordinary times. I probably don't have to tell you, but there are individual challenges, how to live well, how to feel well when we are undergoing crisis, either personal or just kind of witnessing the collective. It can create climate anxiety and helplessness, also kind of just witnessing the social issues around us. But our personal lives have also inevitable crises through changes or just kind of changes of life phases, which kind of pose or force us over and over again ask new questions or new approaches. And on the collective level, we now had a pandemic. We are witnessing the ecological and climate crisis, social inequalities. My suggestion is that we have many unexamined assumptions on progress, success, and human nature, and these affect us as individuals and our institutions. And the crisis is a time when we can ask or explore these unexamined assumptions. And just to mention a few examples what these unexamined assumptions may be. GDP growth is essential for a healthy economy, and GDP is the ultimate and best measure of progress and prosperity. In the standard neoclassical economic teaching is the assumption of the economic man, which is a selfish, competitive, fully rational, pleasure-seeking figure. And it is not just an assumption of the economic models, but there is quite a bit of evidence that it works as a self-fulfilling prophecy as well, both among economic students, but also in our institutions. So it kind of creates a reality way beyond the world of economic models. And the other assumption is what I already mentioned, is that preferences, human preferences are given. And there is this kind of invisible black box of personal preferences. And if we respect freedom, then we just have to accept it as they are, that people are kind of masters of their fate and they know what is best for them. I believe that we are all storytellers of the world, and through our stories, we create our world, and we are often unaware of the origins of these stories. And I call on you and all readers of the book to explore and to connect to our potentials to transform these stories. So what is our inner story of success? What are our convictions and habits? One of the core questions, I think, is how can we enjoy life and be responsible at the same time? It's kind of a question going back to good old Sigmund Freud as well, the founder of psychoanalysis. Is also the conflict between being free and to love others, to be ourselves and to belong to others. And it may be described as the conflict between the id and the superego. The id is the unrestrained, the instinctive, the wild side of us, and the superego is the nice one, the one which is kind of integrating social expectations and wants to kind of do their best to be a good part of this world. And I think also kind of in this current situation of the ecological crisis or the social crisis, this is a really interesting question, kind of how can we enjoy life? How can we live maybe an even more joyful life? Some of us want more joy, not less in our lives, and be at the same time responsible, or not cut ourselves off from the suffering of the world or the actually what is happening. How can we maybe even reduce our consumption and at the same time maybe enjoy life even more than before? And the first kind of invitation, I'm inviting you to explore the myriad faces of happiness. So it's not just simply pleasure, what this traditional economic model is talking about, or utility, but there are like so many facets of measuring well-being, subjective well-being. You probably know quite a bit about this literature. There are the physical sensory pleasures, there are positive feelings, they are often called affect measures in the psychological literature, like joy, elation, contentment, pride, affection, ecstasy, thrill, and many more. Economists particularly like self-reported happiness and self-reported life satisfaction measures, where people are asked how happy they are. It could be on a scale from 0 to 10, or just kind of 4 choice categories. There is a sense of meaning, purpose question also, and then there is a flourishing life indicator. Recently, it's normally an index consisting of various dimensions. And recently, there is also kind of ever more on beyond quantitative measures. Some people call for more intimate, in-depth portraitures of a good life. And of course, our philosophy and religion is talking a lot about happiness and good life, and it goes beyond the numerical metric. And what was kind of striking for me, kind of looking at this literature, is that actually I found that there is surprisingly little attention to the physical and sensory pleasures of our lives. So I found like one kind of review article by Diener, and I think there is potential to explore this more. Happiness is flourishing life. This is a key concept I'm proposing, and I will explain soon why I think it has a key role. This flourishing life was described in the Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle. And he describes happiness not like pleasure or a kind of a lucky outcome due to external circumstances, but rather the activity of the soul. So it's a conscious choice and action, which is also based on a persistent practice of virtues. This is the term he's using, is sometimes translated as excellence. So it's very much an attitude, very much an action by the individual. And this is not isolated or from the rest of the world, but takes place in community and friendship. This is the web of relationships we live in. So I actively contribute to the happiness of others, of the community, of the world, and also the others affect my well-being as well. So in this concept, happiness is not simply what we feel, but rather a result of what we do, how we live. And it is not just kind of part of the ancient Greek philosophy, or not, is not kind of slowly discussed by Aristotle, but it has an extended literature in modern psychology as well. There is a renaissance of Aristotle these days. And the term itself, flourishing life, is eudaimonia. This is the term used by Aristotle, and it means, the word itself means eu is good, and daimon is a spirit. And these daimons were the movers in the celestial spheres in the Greek cosmology, and they moved the planets. And the belief was that there was a perfect order in the cosmos, and our purpose as humans is to achieve this perfection within ourselves as well. So kind of to create this order, this perfect order. And this is kind of my paraphrasing eudaimonia. We could think about it as becoming good spirit, living in harmony with other beings of the cosmos. And it's translated as eudaimonia is translated sometimes as flourishing life, happiness. And one of the key theories from modern psychology, which is linked to flourishing life, is that of self-determination theory, which sees humans as active beings. We are not just kind of acting if we have like a need. It was very much part of the very start of psychology that we act if we are, I don't know, hungry for something, if we have an unmet need. According to self-determination theory, we are active beings who have drives much beyond the physiological or sexual drives. We kind of all want to be autonomous, competent beings who are belonging somewhere. So these are the kind of, we have the needs for freedom, to create something in the world, and to feel that we are loved and we love others, the need of belonging. And what is special in this concept, that they say that we need all three. So it's not just one or the other. And although there are individual variations and also variations according to cultural context, in some countries, belonging may be more and less autonomy. In some others, it's vice versa. But essentially, we need all three. And the ultimate question is like, how can we live this autonomous, creative, and connected life? And to me, this concept of flourishing life could be key to solving our problems. Why do I say it? There is plenty of research on the impact of flourishing life. So people who live a life which has a kind of a good psychological well-being, and also have meaningful activities in their lives, and are able to take actions for their own happiness. So those who have this kind of flourishing life, it has an increase on mental well-being, physical health. These people were shown to live longer, actually, have a better kind of immune response to illness. And flourishing life can make us more responsible, collaborative, and ecologically aware. So there is like a causal impact to action in this way. And it can inspire voluntary simplicity, environmental and pro-social action. So I believe that this philosophy of a good life is a key to our response, because this is a philosophy that is not harmful to oneself or to others. So it's a kind of a long-term sustainable strategy. But the question comes, okay, it's fine, but it's all a philosophy so far. So kind of what can we do to reach this? And I identified three cogwheels or three elements in creating this flourishing life. And I call them become better hedonist, cultivate virtues, and learn, experiential learning. And especially I give the example of theater and role play, but of course, kind of, as educators, there are many, many other ways, and you probably also can complement it with your own methods. How to become a better hedonist? It is partly also kind of questioning what we take for granted. It's a bit kind of scrutinizing our existing desires. So for the ancient Greeks, where this concept comes from, the hedonism, a kind of a key thinker was Epicure, and for them it was not just the way we meet our desires, but it was a path of inner freedom. How can we be masters of our lives without being enchained or enslaved to our desires? And part of this process was to dominate of vain and empty desires, as he calls it. And Epicure was calling for a simple life, which is actually leading to tranquility. So it's like really a stable, calm being. And what Aristotle adds to this this concept is self-mastery. He's talking about self-mastery, which is a state. It's a result of practice. But what is great about self-mastery is that it doesn't hurt anymore. So it's a state when it's not like self-denial when it still hurts that we don't get things, but it's like a freedom where we are masters of our desires. And he also talks about seeking a middle way. So this kind of self-mastery is a middle way between asceticism, depriving ourselves from things, and overindulgence. And it's actually very similar to the middle way of what Buddha lived in his own life, because he started off as a rich prince, so was kind of had everything he could for his self-indulgence. But then he realized that it still doesn't eliminate suffering, kind of aging and death from his life or from the lives of others. So he went into the other extreme of asceticism. He tortured himself, he fasted, and tried. This was the way of trying to dominate his body. But then he realized that it also kind of creates suffering, and it doesn't lead to salvation and awakening. And then he found it in the middle. And this was one of the kind of key teachings about awakening when he reached that state later, that we need a middle way, middle path, and this is personal, and this is depends on the personal situation where we are. So these kind of call us to reflect what is necessary in our lives and what is optional. We know that our consumer society is very much kind of inviting us to think kind of, or even kind of create desires and needs. We try to have like ever more things we take as for kind of basic needs. We think that we need ever more to just live a normal life. And this concept of ancient hedonism is calling us to question what is really necessary and what is optional, kind of what is a nice to have, but not a must. So it's in this way, it's also questioning the messages we get from culture around us. And what is another kind of key element to me in this approach is that there is a greater awareness of the psychological needs, as mentioned by the self-determination theory, and of the body. Pleasure is also a matter of habit. It can be practiced. We learn some way of gaining pleasure or getting pleasure, but we can unlearn these things. And much of it starts in the childhood with education, where kids get pleasure from, and how we train them, but also kind of as adults we can do a lot to take steps for our own inner freedom. There is also evidence that contrary to expectations, less consumption actually can lead to more joy. I'm not sure I will read this because it may be something you are aware of. And so actually there is like a couple of correlational studies showing that people who made a lifestyle shift increase their well-being. There is also some evidence on causal relationship. What is crucial in these studies is that it is a result of voluntary choice. So these people become happier or kind of experience more joy by becoming more minimalist or by consuming less, because it is their choice. They opt for something. So it's very much related to their own values. So the question for me, how to invite those who have other values or who may not want to choose this in the first run. And I think it's an invitation and an exploration. Yeah, and how to become more virtuous. This is the other question. How can we practice the virtues which would make our lives ultimately happier? This is kind of just a few examples. This was kind of a mental experiment. I was taking the freedom of picking some of the virtues described by Aristotle and kind of just imagine what could it mean today in our contemporary world, and what would be the outcome of practicing these specific virtues. For example, cultivating the intellectual virtue, including practical wisdom. According to Aristotle, it is not just kind of an intellectual knowledge about the world, but also kind of knowing what is good for us and for others. So it has much more than cognitive knowledge. It's like a full, it's like wisdom. It's like a full awareness. And I think what it could mean today in our world is an ability for critical thinking and an integral vision of the world, and also kind of a wisdom on what is good for oneself and for mankind. And the possible fruits of this virtue, practicing this virtue, could be more self-care. We can become more able to give ourselves what is good for us. Conscious consumption, and also activism. What comes from cultivating moral virtue of courage? Courage is one of the moral virtues. It is the ability to act in the midst of a threat or fear. So we can remain our ability to act and not just freeze or not just be stuck, but really practicing courage means to seek always what is our potential for action. And it could mean, for example, the active engagement for social and environmental justice. And then my third example, what does the moral virtue of good temper be today? It means angry at the right things and with the right people. but not revengeful. This is actually the definition of Aristotle, but I think it still holds today. And but this kind of anger in his concept is not like is not how you call it? Yeah, it's not revengeful, and it's not doesn't want to hurt anybody, and it's not harmful for oneself either. So I would kind of describe it in today's psychological language as the ability to regulate negative emotions and to avoid automatic reactions. So I notice my anger. I use it as a transformative energy. I use it as a force, as a life force, as a force to inspire action, but not like a trigger for losing my control. And this kind of this is on the one hand, but also kind of not suppressing it, not denying that I experience anger or frustration. So this is the virtue of good temper. And today it means ability to cooperate and handle conflicts, avoiding hateful speech or action. And it can also motivate political engagement or community action, as we see it already in some movements. And finally, I would talk about a playful exploration, what can role play and the theater of the soul, as I call it, do for achieving flourishing life. And I would like to talk about roles, inner roles, in particular related to this, using the concept of Jacob Levi Moreno. He was a psychiatrist who invented, so to speak, group therapy and psychodrama, born in Romania and then living in Vienna, emigrated to the US, where he developed further his concept. And he's sometimes called as the man who brought joy and laughter into psychiatry. I think this was a motto he loved a lot, and it's even on his tomb. And his role theory was not so much a kind of social psychological or sociological theory of the role of the mother or gender roles, but very much focused on practical application. He was working with migrant groups, with prostitutes in Vienna. He was sex workers, we would say now, creating the very first self-help groups. So he was exploring, he was learning by doing. And he acknowledged that there are social roles. For example, educators, for example, is an important social role, or probably you all have roles as women in the society, or some kind of family roles. We all have different roles. But beyond these kind of external roles, there are also inner roles. Moreno talks about psychodramatic roles. In a sense, we can it's a creative process. We can give names to these roles. And he gives the example, a hero, for example. We all have a hero in us, or we can name our inner role as a movie star. Maybe we have, I don't know, James Bond in us, or I don't know what, or you name it. And that role expresses a functioning of us as a kind of an attitude of us which exists in us. Next to many other actually roles, we have a whole repertoire of roles in us. And we have both this kind of intrapersonal aspect of these roles, but they are also kind of interpersonal. And the good message of working with roles is that we can change ourselves, but also we can change the whole culture. The vision is not just working on ourselves, but also kind of becoming part of a whole systemic transformation. And in my book, I was inviting, or now I am also inviting you to imagine your own flourishing life, and just kind of make a thought experiment. What are the inner roles that support you in achieving a flourishing life, which are the roles which help you, and are there inner roles which hinder you, which move you away from living a flourishing life. I give some examples later, maybe that will help to explain exactly what I mean. So I believe that by naming and describing our roles, we venture on a creative process. And ultimately, we also write the story of our lives. And this is a creative process, a playful process, and it's a friendly attitude to ourselves. And this friendliness embraces also those parts of ourselves which may be difficult to accept. And this is where the transformative power lies, actually. And I was making a thought experiment of what could be those progressive roles. I call them progressive roles, those which are supporting the manifestation of flourishing life in ourselves, and which are those which sabotage it, which hinder it. And these are, I call, saboteur roles. And a few examples of progressive roles are the artist in us, the explorer, the rebel, sage, hero, mother, or friend, in a very broad sense. So, like, for example, mother is the one, is a role which sustains life and nourishes life, not just the physical motherhood. A friend is someone who is loyal and creates something, who is able to love and be loved and work well in relationships. The artist is the one which can create art out of the ordinary and transform the maybe more mundane daily experiences and create something surprising and beyond the expected. The rebel questions existing systems, beliefs, and just tries and uses this kind of free energy to question. and the saboteur roles. I am with time. Just to mention a few, perhaps the overachiever, orphan, servant, fool, tyrant, indulger, and they are all kind of roles which we may have to more or less extent. We may an overachiever, maybe the perfectionist, which wants to really meet all expectations, but at the same time exploits oneself, or maybe even exploits others, and loses the sight of things. Can be a very vulnerable place to be. The orphan is kind of desperate, kind of with very little self-worth, and is very much kind of in need of connection or of nourishing. And the servant is subordinate, kind of expecting leadership from others, is not taking responsibility, but rather kind of expects others to do so. The indulger is the extreme in terms of pleasures, the one who cannot limit maybe compulsive desires, even to the extent of addiction, overweight, and so on, and with all the negative consequences of what it means. So these are just some examples. I believe that I also kind of think about these roles related to these three fundamental needs of autonomy, belonging, and competence I mentioned earlier. And I think there is a method to explore them and to playfully embody these roles. In role play, you become one of them, or you become more of them, and you learn to be to kind of be friendly, to understand what was the coping mechanism or the reason for the existence of some of these saboteur roles in your life, maybe they have had a kind of very important function at one point, but may be outdated now and not helpful anymore. But simply denying them or hating them wouldn't bring a solution. But yeah, you know this as psychologists. Yeah, so finally, just a kind of brief advertisement of the book. It can be purchased at the Bristol University Press website. And also, if you buy it on Amazon, I'm happy if you leave a review. And finally, I would like to thank you for your attention. And I'm very, very curious to hear your views, your questions, and your feedback, just to engage more.
Fascinating. Oh my God. I make a whole page filled with notes and question marks. But so let's go around the room and we have about 14 minutes to comment and share questions and insights. Yeah. I was thinking you work so much with values, and how did this presentation resonate with your work? We cannot hear you now. We see body language though. There you go. There you go.
Okay.
Yes.
So my head is like, wow, so many ideas. Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful. And you see, in any part of what you present is you can go deeper and deeper. I'm going to buy the book and read, of course, but many things. I feel the difficulty of people to look inside. They just want to look outside and answer and searching for answers just outside. You know, they're not sick of truth, but sick of pleasure. And not to work, and they don't change behavior. No? They continue to do as I need to do more. I need to do more. I need to do more, and then I will feel happy. They don't question the strategy. Do more. You know, and to start for think a little bit about values. Their values. They are a little. What do you mean by that? You know, come on, let's talk. So I apply an assessment, and they start to be a little bit surprised how their values give direction to their choice, to their actions, and I think that the all your book is the main problem I saw. Anyway, not on to leader, but to people in general, you know, nowadays. When I read the social network, everybody is looking for pleasure, for being nice, for everything is good, everything is wonderful. And most of them are fake. You know, it's fake. They are in a illusion. I always remember the movie Matrix, the first one. You know, it's like that. People are, but it's not the reality. And I think that's the most difficult to look inside. Some Otto Scharmer, she's an MIT professor, and he said that is the lack of connection to itself, connection to others, connection with nature. We have a lack of connection. And this thing, yeah. It's like I feel. You know? So congratulations on all this water research and I have no, I just imagine the work that all of you, Isabel also, and Karina, to write a book like this. It's a lot of work, really, and reflection and research. So thank you. It's a gift for us. It's a gift.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
I had a question. I love this exercise of what you presented about the inner roles and where you what values are or what roles are hindering and or flourishing and supporting. How do you convert that into an exercise? Can you give us an example?
I mean, first you can create a role inventory with a person. I mean, it's normally kind of functions better. Kind of, I do it interactively. So kind of just imagine what are the kind of more important roles you have, sometimes related specifically to a life situation. For example, they are, I don't know, have some kind of difficulties, and then, okay, so what is active here? And then they see, wow, I have like, I don't know, this over-performing perfectionist in me, and it's just holding back. And there is the other one, which the creative artist, which would go, wow. And then, and then it becomes like visible. And then they ask them to embody these roles. So they kind of act it, and the group helps them to act it. And then I think what is kind of interesting is that sometimes people don't notice the obvious, kind of what is functioning well. So kind of one possible exercise is to make an imaginary encounter with an old teacher or mentor who appreciates them a lot, and kind of in the role of this person, just kind of describe themselves. What do you, you as kind of dear professor, I don't know, Herman, what do you see of this kind of little Isabel? Kind of, why do we appreciate her? What's so great about her? And sometimes in that role, they are able to kind of express what is what they appreciate about this person. And this is one possibility. Or we can just kind of work a bit on kind of making the obvious visible, in a sense. What are the strengths? What is already there, which works well? And then comes, of course, the kind of it's a kind of more challenging work on the sabotage roles, because sometimes these are things people are maybe ashamed, or like I have this kind of perfectionist side which is completely exploits myself, or maybe I'm even exploiting my co-worker. But then it's just in a playful way, like in the psychodrama, because it's also kind of outside of the usual context. So kind of it can be very kind of a picturesque work, and during the process they kind of transform or find a new function. So for example, with this kind of work, like the girl realized at the end that actually it really helps them to learn new things, the perfectionist, or it's kind of a helpful quality, and which help them to really achieve a lot in life. So she doesn't want to get rid of it completely, but kind of reshuffle kind of how it is there in their lives. And then of course, and then it was kind of in the next occasion, she already said she quit her job in the multinational company, found a new. So actually it really follows up in actions. It's quite nice. It's not just a fantasy, but it can really reshuffle things. I'm not sure I could describe it properly, but like this is one exercise. But also you can create a scene about the flourishing life. I like to imagine or kind of visualize it. Kind of what is there? How are you there? With whom are you there? What do you experience? And also kind of what is the inner quality which helps you there? What is alive there? Maybe, your artist is very alive. Maybe you are a hero, kind of doing something extraordinary. Maybe you are like a community leader. Maybe you are the sage. Everyone comes to you kind of, and you are really connecting them to their wisdom, whatever. And it's also possible for a community or team to create. What is your vision? It can be also kind of more specific. How do you see yourself in 10, 20 years? Kind of how express it.
Wow.
So I think this is possible. Yeah.
Very, very nice. And as you say, when we name these things, they become part of our cycle. It expands consciousness. And then in a way, the intention takes charge. If you're familiar with intentional theory of change, which is once we become aware and are more intentional, then things happen, even if we are not planning for them, but in internal programming happens.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very good. Yeah.
Maybe I can add just a few thank you words to both Isabel and Orsolya for connecting first Isabel to Orsolya, who was so generous and gave me her book as a gift. I think that would be for me like one of the best books that I can suggest to anyone who is at some point of confusion in their life, who has the questions to be answered. And it's really a gift because you provide such a solid foundation for people who are asking questions, who are reflecting. I think for adults, like in the middle crisis, where I see a lot of people from my generation, which are now kind of in their 40s asking the questions and why. Mm-hmm. And you gave a lot of also instruments, how we can immediately assess where we are, which values are there, and even the words that you use, like the soul and the braveness and the boldness of how you are criticizing the mainstream paradigms. I just loved reading it, and the connection to Vienna for me with Moreno and the whole method. So again, I was reading, wow, here we go, this city. And Isabel has also, her roots is in Romania, right?
Yeah, and, well, Transylvania.
Yeah, it's almost like there. So
I didn't know that Moreno was from there.
Yeah, so this place and Freud and everything, how much I think management now makes a psychological turn. So, and those who feel it, that it's in the air, we're just, building something new or making this turn. So thank you so much. Maybe a small question. What was this whole exercise of writing a book for you? What kind of meaning it gave you?
To me, it was, exactly this kind of, maybe as a practice of my own autonomy and freedom, just in this kind of language, kind of what can I do if I give myself the full freedom to write about something which I think is relevant and I feel passionate about. So this was my pet project after doing kind of much of funded research and so on. So it's just taking me out of the system and reflecting kind of what can I create from my own autonomy and what kind of also is creative in the way that contributes to things I perceive as relevant in the world. So I was listening a lot and trying to connect to the questions and the communities and what is arising. So this was my motivation and my passion for this. But of course, this kind of presentation, I mean, I feel I could say so many stories about this book. So I'm still wondering whether it was, this is one story, but I could create a completely different story related to kind of how pleasure seeking is and how it can go wrong and what is the right way of pleasure seeking. This could be another story. I could tell another story on searching for values. What are the core values and how can we strengthen them in our lives? I have a chapter on values and so on, and how seeking for happiness can go wrong and why us kind of deliberately forcing positivity and happiness can be kind of worse than just be more authentic. Anyway, I have lots of alternatives. This is also an exploration for me how I am telling my story.
Oh, wonderful. Are you familiar with Steve McIntosh? He's an American author, contemporary, and I listened to a session recently about virtues, and I was talking to him because I was very curious how bringing back this molded. We don't talk about virtues anymore. Looks like things out of fashion. And he brings it back, and he brings it into contemporary terms, very much like you're doing. So I thought that it would be interesting if you take a look at his work or connect. Very interesting. Now, he would love to read your book. So if you want, I can introduce you.
Yeah, wow, that sounds very good. Yeah.
Okay, well, we hit the hour, and I'm so grateful that you were able to accommodate to make this presentation, and we will make the recording available. And I will stop it now.